All right, that's what I wanted to see. Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit about Calgary itself because it is a very inviting city. It's a vibrant city, an exciting city, young in demographics. We have a lot of young families living here, and it's a relatively new city. It's only about 150 years old or so. Before that, um, at the confluence of a couple of rivers, it was an indigenous meeting ground for quite a long time, for thousands of years before that, I would imagine. But the city's grown up around there, and our venue itself is just on the edge of the city on indigenous nation property belonging to the Tsuut'ina people. And if things go according to plan and schedule, we are going to have some entertainment from the people who live at Tsuut'ina, and also some greetings from Chief Crowchild, who is a beekeeper himself, and that's going to be part of our venue for the programs. So Calgary, where is it located? It's up here in Canada, near the Rocky Mountains in Alberta, and that puts us right north of Montana. And everywhere else doesn't matter except to get here. And there's the kind of basic costs for a round trip ticket as priced out by me a couple of days ago. This was using WestJet. It's a commercial airlines based here in Calgary, but obviously there's also Air Canada and all the American airlines. So many of them do fly in and out of Calgary. But the cost of coming up is not prohibitive if you're already planning on taking a few days off from your work, and you want to see a whole different place, a place where a lot of people come just simply to holiday. So come up holiday, but also come up for our conference. So why Calgary? I already mentioned it is a young city, a lot of exciting things going on here. Um, and 1.5 million, well, not quite 1.5 million, about 1.3 million people make up our community. And it's an extremely pleasant place to live. It every year the Economist magazine, it's a business magazine, will rate cities around the world so that employers know how much money they should be giving to their workers when they assign them to places around the world as a bonus pay. And in order to do that, they rank the cities and say, okay, this city's safe, the city has good education, good health care, and so on. Calgary ranks number one in North America and number three in the world, with only Vienna and Zurich being above us in the last year. So it's a very comfortable city, and we hope that when you come up for the conference, you'll be able to spend a few extra days and really enjoy the entire ambiance of the city, and get around the area outside the city. So our venue is a big yellow dot. I don't know if my mouse is showing up, but it's in the lower left-hand corner. That's on Tsuut'ina Nation. So Tsuut'ina Nation is this property here, and it's home to about 4 or 5 thousand folks, and they have built a resort very close to main highways in Calgary. It's that resort that we're going to be at. You will fly in. If you're flying in, you're going to fly into the airport in the Northeast, and it's about a 30-minute drive down to the resort from there. So you're probably going to rent a car, and if you don't, there's Uber and taxis of different sorts. So you can find your way down here, and and while you're here, it's not a difficult thing to get into the downtown core of the city to see some of the museums and art galleries and so on. But a lot of people will come in and they will want to go off on this road to the west because it will take them to Banff up into the Rocky Mountains, or they'll head off the opposite direction to the east, and they can go to the world-class dinosaur museums that Alberta has supported, and research scientists work at. So there's a lot to see outside the city, but this is where you would stay, or at least where you will be for the conference itself. So our conference is at the Grey Eagle Resort, which is ranked on TripAdvisor as number 4 out of 116 hotels in Calgary. So we're not number one. That would be way too expensive. This is a nicely priced place to hold conferences, and it's also quite fortuitous that Chief Crowchild, who lives at Zutina, is also a beekeeper, and he has been giving us some advice and some help in some of the planning stages of the conference as well. That's what the conference looks like, the main hotel part of it, and where the conference rooms are. This is the entire layout of the conference. Off to the left are the hotels. There will be parking for RVs without services, but we are told that people are allowed and encouraged to sleep inside their RVs overnight on site. They just won't have access to electricity. So if you got battery backup and porta pots or whatever you're using in your RV, you're very welcome to stay on site, and uh, and you'll be handy there day and night. So that's an option for people who are driving in. For people who are flying in, there are 116 hotels in our city. They are filling up already for the fall. And so our conference being at the end of September, 1st of October, it's one of the lean periods as far as tourism is concerned, because it's before peak skiing and it's after peak hiking. But Calgary is a very popular place, so things do fill up here quickly, and we are finding that that people are registering quite nicely for the conference. It's a go. We've reached momentum, and you want to sign up before we fill up, because we are limited. So you will want to look into that sooner than later. Calgary, as I just mentioned, is wedged between mountains to the west of us and Badlands to the east of us. It's the Badlands where the dinosaurs' bones are found for some of the huge, phenomenal dinosaurs that have been discovered in recent years. But the mountains, in September, October, hiking trails are still mostly open, and you can have a really great time. Plus, the town of Banff itself is a scenic mountain village that a lot of people like to spend a day at. Both of those are roughly an hour to the west or east, so certainly doable. Living and staying in Calgary and then taking off for a day for a personal tour, that's highly encouraged here. So why Alberta in general for a conference like this? Well, we've got a good mix of both commercial and hobby beekeepers. There are about 2,000 beekeepers in the province of Alberta. Only 150 of them are commercial beekeepers, commercial operators. That's just 8% of the beekeepers, but they produce almost 98% of all the honey produced in the province. So these are really large scale honey producers, often running between, well, usually running over 3,000 colonies of bees and up to about 20 or 30,000 colonies. So we have some big operators, and we also have a very vibrant community of sideliners and hobby beekeepers. And it's because of the huge volunteer spirit among the beekeepers in Calgary that we are putting together what's going to be a very successful conference, because we have the volunteers from the Calgary and District Beekeepers Association. They are out in force to help make this thing work. And they're very engaged beekeepers, very knowledgeable beekeepers. They just got finished with their annual big party at the Calgary Stampede. Over 1 million people attended the Stampede this year, and roughly half of them walked into and through the Calgary and District Beekeepers bee exhibits, and they have a huge area set up talking about bees in Alberta. So these people are knowledgeable, they're engaged, they want to help. But also, on top of that, Alberta is just such a unique place for producing honey. We have these huge crops. It's not at all unusual for commercial beekeepers to expect to average about 200 pounds every year from each colony. That's because we have very long days in the summer. Our bees are still flying at 9:30 in the evening, and and we have enough sunshine, enough rainfall, and the right kind of flowers that everything comes together really nicely to make a good honey crop. We also have, on the bad side, we've got those really long winters up here. So from about the 1st of November until, about at least the first week of April, there is nothing for the bees to gather. They have to consume food that they've saved, or the beekeeper, under usual conditions, because the winter's so long, the beekeeper will have to supplement some of the feed that the bees are getting. And we have extreme weather. We have hailstorms and big winds from time to time, but during the summer, July and August tends to be pretty good for honey production. That's why we have these sorts of crops. And I just kind of want to go through this just for a few seconds. Most recently, so this is time. This is 1920 all the way up to 2015, or a little further because I go past 2015. But these are the size of the honey crops. Now, it used to be that there was a lot of oscillation. So beekeepers were throwing the dice every year. They didn't know if this was going to be a good year or a bad year. Sometimes the amount of rainfall would tip them off, because we are in the dry prairies. So if it gets really dry, your honey crop might fall down to about 100 pounds on average. But in other years, you're up at that 200 mark. And that's really where a lot of the commercial beekeepers tend to be. Our overall average, though, is somewhat lower. This is because we have a lot of hobby beekeepers, and we average that in. But it's also because out of the 350,000 colonies of bees in Alberta, around 70,000 of them are taken to canola pollination. So when you put bees into canola pollination in Alberta, you will not make very much honey. So when you average in those 70,000 colonies of not making very much honey compared to the guys making the 200 pounds or so, we end up with an official average close to 130, 140. It's in that ballpark for the overall average for the beekeepers in Alberta. Hives in Alberta have been continually growing, with a few minor setbacks. Back in the 1940s, after the war, people gave up beekeeping, and I'll explain that in a couple of minutes. And throughout time, they've just basically gradually brought more and more bees into Alberta. And then we had a big fall off in the 1980s because the American border for packages, and this young lady here has got packaged bees in her hands, that was closed. And Canadian beekeepers suffered badly by the border closure. So there was a big drop in the number of colonies that are kept. We lost about 50,000 hives, and a lot of commercial beekeepers had to go out of business. Then it slowly worked its way back up, and now it's gone way past that. We're up over 300,000 colonies of bees right now in Alberta producing honey. Bees that look like this. Colonies of bees sitting near alfalfa patches. Big flows here could mean 15 to 25 pounds of net gain in honey in a single day. Not uncommon at all. So you have to have the supers ready. Sweet clover is everywhere up here, and it is probably the primary honey plant as far as the amount of nectar that sweet clover can produce. Of any plant in the world, sweet clover probably dominates the stage on that. So if you've never seen sweet clover before, it looks like this. It was brought in by farmers for a hay crop, not so successful as a hay crop, but it went wild, and it sometimes covers the badlands just outside of Calgary, looking like this. That's all yellow flowers that are going to produce tons of honey. The other big crop, and well, actually it's the biggest crop of honey produced in Alberta, comes from canola. So this is a scene not too far outside of Calgary of canola production. So between those flowers, the canola, the sweet clover, and the alfalfa, that's where over 90% of all the honey that's produced in Alberta is coming from. And fortunately, that honey falls into the water white to extra white category. I don't know who created this. This is from the USDA. So these are official color rankings that you can sell your honey for. So if you're going to sell extra light amber, it has to look like the one near the middle. And the very, very dark honey is called amber. And the white honey is yellow. I think that was kind of a marketing ploy to help the beekeepers, but that's how honey is graded, and our honey tends to be super white. So I'm mentioning all these things. This is just a scene, just about 15 minutes from the edge of Calgary, looking towards the mountains. You can see the really rich black soil and more canola fields. I'm just mentioning all these things because you'll have an opportunity to look at this, to learn about beekeeping here, learn about how people winter their hives, how they handle these huge crops. That's also going to be part of our Northern Lights venue for our conference. Um, yeah, I think I'm getting close to the end here. I just want to remind you that the workshops will be on the Friday. So if you can plan at least 3 days for this, the workshops are only $50 for a whole day. That's Canadian money, which is like almost free in US money. So $50 for the workshops on Friday, and then you can pay 150 for Saturday and Sunday. That's $75 Canadian a day for those 2 days. You buy the 2 days together and you get into all the presentations. Also, food is included, lunch is included, not breakfast or dinner. That's up to you. But for that low price, you're getting a lot of quality. And there will be some tours that they're not designed yet, but you may end up renting that car or teaming up with some other beekeepers who are visiting and head off to the mountains for the Monday. But we're going to try to have options for you as well. So what's next? You've got to register. You've got to reserve rooms in Calgary. So go to that site that Etienne just showed you, and the link is right there on the page, on the slide that you're looking at. Get in there before it's sold out, because this is a conference you don't want to miss. You want to see Calgary. You want to learn about northern beekeeping, even if you're somewhere down in New Mexico, we'll say. It's just that there's such dramatic differences where bees are kept in different areas, but yet we still have that common connection with our bees. So I'm hoping very much that we'll see as many people as possible up here. It's just going to be a great fun time. Okay. Questions?
Thanks, Ron and Etienne. Yeah, it's looking awesome. And the dates, I remember that those are looking like promising dates too. So I'm hoping I can make it up there. That's my
We're
plan.
hoping, Melanie, we really hope you can be up here. I think you'll really
Yeah.
enjoy it. I know that you're scheduled to speak in Santiago, Chile.
Yes, and that's still coming together, but that'll be early September for
That's
Apamundia. So I'm just trying to figure out all my this year has been busy like no other. I've had several USDA trainings and of course, field work. So I know I'm not the only one who's really busy. I know a lot of people are, but I think this was an event not to be missed. So I'm definitely going to try my darndest to get there. And I know it's our first conference in several years. So it's going to be all that much more exciting to see everybody in person. The location looks great. I love the diversity of presentations that are being offered and those speakers. I recognize and some are new. So there's going to be all sorts of cool information that we can learn and share and really get to just hang out. I mean, what better things to do than to be with people who like to geek out about bees too, right? So that's like
You
heaven on
bet.
earth. So
You bet. Yeah, we're hoping you
yeah.
can make it. Hoping everybody can make it.
So that
Yeah.
was the main reason why I wanted to keep the business meeting as short as possible. Is even for us organizing it's about the event. It's about meeting each other, talking to each other, talking bees, learning, helping others, mentoring, coaching. Uh, and I know we don't want to be stuck in a meeting for half a day, so we will have a short business meeting, but we'll fit it in between on the Friday so that we don't miss anything.
Yeah. And all members are invited to go because this is your organization. So if you um have ideas, suggestions, and of course volunteerism is much appreciated. This is the opportunity to bring those to the group and really give opportunity for discussion and for folks to hear these things, and we can develop some I want to call them calls to action, but also some short-term and long-term visions for the organization, which I think is always something good for us to talk about. Well, thank you both. And I don't see any questions in the Q&A, but if folks have some questions, feel free to put them in. And then also, not to volunteer you, Ron, but I know you're doing a lot of the logistical work. Do you have a particular email, or who should folks contact if they have a more specific question? Should they just go to our website and send it through the contact, or should they email you specifically, or what do you suggest?
Well, I tend to be pretty lazy and I delegate everything I possibly can. If emails came to me, I usually hand them off to whomever I think would be most appropriate to handle it. But Etienne is really, he's the spark plug. He's the one who has been doing the organizing work, and I can't imagine how he does it from 400, well, it's more than 400 kilometers away. How far is it to Calgary, Etienne? You're probably 1,000.
Yeah, I think 2000, like just under 2000.
Oh, yeah, and yet you're on top of it. You've got everything under control. So don't send me any notes, just send them to Etienne.
So there is a there's a Gmail, there's a couple emails. So there's WAS conference, B conference. If you go to the website, it's on there. And if you've got my email, yukonhoneybees@gmail.com. And if you register, you'll get bounced with a registration thing with the email address. So that's probably the best way to reach us, is after your registration.
Awesome. And I was just typing in your email in the chat just because it's the easiest one for me to mention, but there we go. Thank you, Carrie. Carrie put the contact for our organizational page. Well, awesome. I'm super excited, and I think this was, a cool webinar for tonight, because we got to talk about urban settings, and then also where we get to go visit, and in between the mountains and the Canadian countryside. So that's pretty exciting. That's super cool. All right. Well, I don't have anything else to add tonight. I just want to remind folks that for August and September, we will not be having the mini cons, because focus will be on the conference as it's in its final stages and ready for the kickoff event on Friday, September 29th. So again, check the website. And then Dewey and I will be working on a couple of speakers for after the conference, probably October, November, and then we may take December off, because that tends to be a busy holiday month as well. And then but we'd love to hear suggestions. If you have ideas for presenters or presentations, topics that you'd like to see and hear, send that also to the contact, and we'll be able to work on getting some speakers. Dewey, did you want to say anything, or did anybody else on our panel want to say anything?
I'll just say something really quick. Ron created a Facebook group for the conference, so I just added a URL to it. So it's like facebook.com/groups Calgary B Conference. So it's, if you search it, it's WAS/CDBA 2023 B Conference. So if you've got any questions, it's probably a good forum, because if you have the question, I have a feeling other people have the same question. So there's about 122 people on members now of the group, so it's growing. And I will ask the vendors, the speakers, participants. Basically, it's a forum to share. So you can prime your questions for when you get to the conference. So anyways, there's a Facebook group for the conference.
What was the name of that again? I was just trying to find it to put the link in the chat, but
I'll do that really quick.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem.